Think I'm officially a parent. My office is a complete mess. Fingernails are getting too long. I haven't shaved in a week. And if I have to admit it, I am tired. So here's your intro. Let's open up and talk a little bit about that draft. Now, Sean is the obvious story here. He had 7 picks within the first 4 rounds, which is most of his starters outside of kicker and defense. I don't know how he came out of that with what he came out of it with. Weird sentence. I don't like it. I just kind of don't. It's just not it. I think he got really cute in very fantasy, football analysis, sleepers, projected value. I think he bought way too much into that crap. Like, he had opportunities to lock down an absolute stud, stardom forever, quarterback and tight end, and just didn't. He took Bo Nix, who is pretty theoretical, and David Njoku, who was like, well, if he performs like he did last year, yeah, that dude has had an up season, down season, up season, down season, up season, down season for the past 6 seasons. It's always been like, ooh, if David Njoku could look like this, then he'd be Gronk. He's not. He may have made some of like the right picks here. There might be some guys who pan out a little bit later on, but like I just don't like it. And for a team that could have come out of the draft with like just an absolute juggernaut of a team, I look at it and I'm not in love. I think Pete is actually the best team coming out of this draft. He locked up Josh Allen, an absolute workhorse running back, and a few studs at wide receiver. Sean went for wide receiver depth. Pete got wide receiver studs. We, I think, now officially need to rename the boyfriend league mate spot to the husband league mate spot. Congrats, buddy. This spot has never won the league. It's only rarely made the playoffs. So let's see if betrothment carries you to victory. Um, I gotta be a little bit reflexive here. Uh, you see those on the main page there. ESPN has these rankings, right? Of like, hey, like we project your team in week one, and then it has that stupid slider of like up and down. And well, they think I'm 12th, and they think I am thoroughly 12th. I don't blame them. I didn't have a second round pick. I didn't have a sixth round or a seventh round either, where those are usually you kind of lock up a few starters in there. Um, I might have already punted on the season. I'm on a real quest here for second to last place. Now, my last big draft take here is that I think Bula should be last in these rankings. He drafted 3 quarterbacks, 2 tight ends, and just out of principle, that is absolute hot garbage. I don't know how ESPN does like their rankings or their scoring system for this thing, but you can't start all of those players. So what the actual fuck? He's got a few solid starters, but like if one of those guys gets injured, he just doesn't have a bench. Okay, rapid fire team by team draft takes. Brennan, your team is fragile. Tim, your team is everyone that like someone's girlfriend could name. Mm, Veterans, but many over the hill. Not convinced they're not washed. Your team's really weird. It's very on brand for how you typically draft. You got these kind of high upside guys, and then a couple of like sneaky, boring value guys. But out of all of the teams I've seen you draft recently, this might be one of my least favorites. Trevor, you drafted every single player that had a big season last year who was a prime regression to the mean candidate. Every single one of your players might have already had their peak season. That's fascinating. Uh, Signey, you have a few studs and a few duds. I think you could be this year's big boomer bust team led by, 2 players scoring 90% of your points and then having just 7 other players scoring 5 points per game. You still might get some wins. TJ Tatro, your team is kind of sneaky. Lots of guys that could go off and one guy named Kyle Pitts. Alex, your team is fine. I think you'll win a few games early. Some solid starters. You have no bench, and you don't know how to use the waiver wire. So yeah, we'll see in November. Um, Meg Meg with auto draft did my two favorite things in the draft. She drafted Chris McCaffrey, which I'm not sure how far he would have fallen in the draft had it not been for an auto drafting person taking him where she took him. The second thing is that she took both of the wide receivers that were suspended for drunk driving, reckless driving sorts of kind of incidents. One of them, and I'm going to read this because this is fucking awesome. Jordan Addison was legally charged with a quote, wet reckless, unquote. That is the term for what he was legally charged with and then suspended by the NFL for. So, Meg, you and your suspenders are going to get wet and reckless. Now we've gotten all that out of the way, let's talk about week one and kind of the quick beginnings of the season. The first few weeks are all about like, how did you draft? Did you draft good guys? Did you draft sleepers that are going to be better later on in the season? Hey, might take some losses early. Did I really fuck up this draft and draft a retired guy? Sean, you drafted a retired guy. All right. So in week one, scoring was down. We very commonly were seeing average scoring weeks where all of our scorings averaged out is like in the 120s, high 120s, 130s, like solid scores. We have an extra flex, we have 6-point passing touchdown, and we have half PPR. All things that theoretically should boost scoring. Oh, and our defensive scoring is a little tweaked, but whatever. Just again, let's boost scoring. Points are cool. This was just tragic. I mean, we had many scores not break 110. We had one score break 130. Let's run through the matchups here. TJ Tatro took on Brennan. Brennan, you get a pretty rough start here. Your best players are your quarterback, your defense, and your kicker. They were and your tight end. But tight end Bald Spot Bowers might have already busted up his knee, so unsure about that one. They were the only guys on your team that actually scored more than 10 points. Your benched quarterback scored a lot. Would have won you the game matchup. So, loyalty or intelligence? Or are those the same thing in this case? I don't know. TJ Tatro, you had your big man show up. Having Derrick Henry is really cool. He looks all the time like he is running with a belt, with a dead body, just dragging a dead body behind him. And he's still faster than everybody. A score of 105 to 97, though, is absolutely puke-tastic. And the prime example of what I was talking about with scoring being down. This is hot garbage. Get it out of my face. Al took on Meg, which Lieutenant Auto Draft really strikes again here. Christian McCaffrey, turns out he's fine. And I got to shout out TJ Tatro here. This might be the year for Michael Pittman Jr. Too bad you jumped off the bandwagon 1 year too early after being on it for 4 years. Al's men, extremely pedestrian here. They wouldn't have beaten Bula. I love that you drafted Drake May. I know one of these kind of loyal homer picks. I think he has some juice. Deep down, I'm wish casting. I'm really not sure on Drake May. In 3 games, he could look like Mac Jones. Fuck, I said that out loud. Trevor took on Bula, and we finally see a score over 120. Bula had a decent all-around performance here. 5 players scoring above 10 points. 3 of them above 20. This is what we want to see. This is a fantasy football roster. Like this is a fantasy football team. Kicker and defense are hot garbage though. That'll get figured out the first couple weeks. Or they're impossible to figure those out. I have to call Bula back out again for his draft strategy here because he drafted Kyler Murray, which is a solid like let's start him all the time kind of quarterback. But then he also drafted two more quarterbacks to put on his bench to back up Kyler Murray. Okay, what the fuck ever. Trevor, your luck might have run out, but I don't think it matters if you're the defending champion. I got pretty bored looking at his lineup, so we're just moving on. Signy, you almost did it. This was the matchup, besides my own, that I was refreshing the most often. Man, this was so close. Sean, why was this close? 118 points from all of your draft capital. You come out of the draft as the overwhelming favorite, and then you immediately underwhelm. Absolutely pathetic. No players scoring over 20 points. Decent running backs, but drastically underperforming wide receivers based on name value. But maybe that's what they are. Maybe you just have like six guys who can score 12 points instead of having three guys who can score 20. You know, this George Pickens thing, I'm obsessed with George Pickens. George Pickens is one of my absolute favorite players. Watching him get in a fight during that Hail Mary throw last season cemented George Pickens as one of my favorite players in the NFL. Behind uh, the version of Antonio Brown that hugged the goalpost, and the version of Randy Moss that played for the Patriots, and the one that mooned the crowd. So that's all versions of Randy Moss. Anyway, Signy, I was keeping such like a close eye on this game, and I'm so glad you kept it close. I really, like I'm saying, I wanted you to win this. But you only have three good starters: Lamar Jackson, Saquon backshots, and your kicker. And you have two backup quarterbacks for Lamar Jackson. I mean, I was roasting Bula for having two backup quarterbacks for Kyler Murray, and you have two backup quarterbacks for Lamar Jackson. If you don't get like wins early in the season, this might be rough. All right, is this a Pete win or a Tim loss? I'm thinking this is a Pete win. I mean, you come out and you score the most points in the league in a week. It's a win. With scoring down, it might have just been consolidated. Like we might have all fucked up and just let Pete get all the good players. Solid performances out of everybody except your kicker and defense, but kicker and defense are a real crapshoot early in the season. Like kickers don't understand the wind yet, and we don't understand defenses. Like I commented on Tim's team before, there's just a lot of players that like your girlfriend would be able to name. And that doesn't mean anything in fantasy football. No one was impressive. And 16 points from Chuba Hubbard uh, was the most out of on his team, and that might be the most points Chuba Hubbard scores all season. All right, me and Alex. Fuck the Bears. I know my team is weak. I know. I know this is gonna. I'm going into this with a certain outlook on the season. I know what it is. I know what my draft was. But Jesus fucking Christ. Like, get out of my face. We had a 6 point swing when that Bears kicker kicked a field goal. My defense lost points, her kicker gained points, and that flipped the game, and I lost by less than a fucking point. Not happy about that. Because I was looking at this matchup thinking, hey, I have a chance for one win. Let's just get one on the board. And then that's one step closer to second to last place. But that goes out the window. And there we have it. Week one is done, dusted, and we're really off to the races. Every week one, I get so shook. I think I know a bunch about football. I watch videos of training camp and I listen to podcasts, but I live a very isolated football life. I know no one over here that can even name three NFL teams, let alone watches the sport, right? So I'm just sitting around like in my head coming up with stuff. And then I watch week one and I'm like, I know nothing about anything about this sport. Well, of course, I actually don't know anything about the sport. Like Do I really know the difference between a spy linebacker and a zone linebacker? Fucking no. So what am I talking about? But here I am just sitting around. But I do know one thing for sure. Ohio State wide receivers are fucking filthy. So, Pete Top, Brennan Bottom, see you next week.